This week on the Nittany Dispatch, we discuss what we've seen from Penn State football during spring practice and what we've heard from Penn State's players and coaches this week on the Nittany Dispatch. Hello and welcome to the Nittany Dispatch. I'm Jon Sauber, Penn State beat writer at the Center Daily Times. She is Audrey Snyder, and we are back doing the podcast as we will be doing for the foreseeable future. Do not fret, it will continue. But it has been a busy spring thus far. Audrey and I have both been at practice talking to players and coaches. I've been watching practice more than we usually get, which is has been very nice. We've seen a lot more. I believe we recorded after the first practice and talked about that a little bit. That's continued a good bit, but this has been a welcome change that we get to see some of this during spring ball.
Yeah, it's been nice to see players out on the field a little bit more. We've heard from a good portion of the coaches at this point too, which has been really nice. We talked with Jim Knowles this week. I believe we'll probably hear from Andy Kotelnicki this upcoming week, I would imagine, heading into the spring game. Heard from Nick Singleton. I mean, we've gotten pretty much the heavy hitters, right? At some point we'll get Drew Aller, which again, for context, for most of these guys, this is the first we've talked to them since the Orange Bowl for the most part. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And also, John, you forgot in the intro, the portal is open. And
yeah, I like to forget that not only during the intro, but in my day-to-day life, because that is making things increasingly hectic and chaotic at this time of year.
Some people can just kind of not have to worry about these things, right?
Yeah, that's true. Some of us don't have to worry about that. But no, the portal is open. Penn State has lost 3 players to the portal already. Offensive lineman J.B. Nelson, linebacker Tamir Robinson, and cornerback Jon Mitchell. I think we can a quick hit on Mitchell and then talk about the other 2. Mitchell, cornerback, 4-star from the 2024 class from Florida. I don't know that he was going to be a massive contributor this year. I would have guessed that he would have been the 5th, 6th, 7th corner on this team, somewhere in that range, not in the too deep, essentially, is what I'm saying. And I think that loss could end up hurting Penn State in the long run, but it won't have as much of an impact on the 2025 team. The other 2, I think, are really interesting. I want to talk about Robinson first, even though I think Nelson would have played more and was competing for a starting job and Robinson was not. But I think this is a good indication of what Penn State's defense is going to look like, right? Like, I know there's been some consternation about 4-2-5, 4-3, why is Penn State shifting away from linebackers, whatever. I mean, last year they were mostly not in base, mostly not in 4-3, right? They have been a 4-2-5 team since Franklin got here. And I would anticipate that being the case moving forward, essentially meaning there's going to be less of a need for starting linebackers and depth linebackers, right? You're putting 2 out on the field, you're probably playing 2 behind them, and that's kind of it. And Robinson, I think, was probably a front runner to be a backup behind Tony Rojas at linebacker, but he is I don't know. I don't know that he would have been a perfect fit in Jim Knowles' defense. And I do think the fact that they're switching more heavily, even though they already were, into a 4-2-5, to the point that I don't know how often we're going to see 3 linebackers out there unless it's a goal line situation.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see it very often. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think this is a good indication of what this defense is going to look like and how it's going to be shaped moving forward as long as Knowles is there.
Yeah, and to me, this is the most surprising of the 3 departures, but I'm with you in that as soon as I heard about it, it was like, well, yeah, this makes sense with a 4-2-5. Robinson is somebody you talk about, the intangibles and the leadership and that Mike linebacker spot especially. He was a guy who, whenever we spoke to him, he really oozed the leadership potential and was one of those guys. So obviously, yeah, there's an impact on special teams, I think, for sure. That's probably where you would have mostly seen him this year. But the other piece to this whole portal thing, and it's something that James Franklin hit on this week, and it's something I asked Terry Smith about a few weeks ago, is how in the world do you approach this when essentially it's free agency for your roster and your spring game is still a week plus away? What do you do? And Terry Smith's answer to me a few weeks ago was, well, we hope everybody stays and competes through the end of spring ball. And when he said that, in my head, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not happening because
it's not possible.
Right. The portal closes and then you have this. I think the spring game and the portal close the same day, I believe.
No, so the portal closes midnight Friday night, I believe. So that 13 hours before the spring game kicks off, I believe the portal closes.
Yeah. So it's an absolute wreck. Because I mean, I remember we had the situation last year where it's like, well, here's the spring game. Keandre Lambert-Smith isn't here. And now it's like, okay, you're at practice this spring and the portal's open. Like, who isn't here, right? And
Right.
it's just a little bit more housekeeping. But yeah, the Tamir Robinson thing, for me, that's the most significant one. And again, we're recording this Thursday afternoon, so I mean, who's to say what happens, right?
Yeah, and there could be more. I don't want to
Oh boy, here
say
you
anything I
go, getting us
shouldn't.
in trouble. Here you go.
There will probably be more, right? I don't think I'm going out on a limb there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you crunch the numbers game, right? And
Yeah, I didn't mention Beckham D, a walk-on as well, who is also in the portal, but there will be walk-ons going in, presumably, just to get spots on rosters. That happened with Penn State basketball too. Their only walk-on went in the portal to essentially free up a roster spot that can, if they want to, be used on a scholarship player. Wouldn't expect that to be the case with Penn State basketball. Penn State football, I kind of anticipate them maximizing as much as they can.
Pivoting right into Penn State basketball.
I'm just using it as an example.
Sure.
But no,
I mean, the wrestling stuff has been really interesting. I know they've had some significant additions, subtractions, coaching returns. Yeah,
it's been
technically not my problem right now, but
right.
I see some things. Yeah.
But no, I do think that Tamir is the kind of loss that gives us the most information about the team this year, I guess. But JB Nelson was probably the one that was going to start. And you mentioned the weirdness of like Keandre just not being in spring game last year. JB Nelson was at practice last Tuesday when we were there, and then he wasn't on the team 3 days later. And I think that's a good indication of how quickly these things can happen. I think he's a starting level Power 5 guard. I think he had a chance to start at Penn State. Kind of problem is they have Venga Ioane, who is one of the best guards in the Big Ten, and Cooper Cousins, who looks like he's going to be one of the best guards in the Big Ten. And Nelson was competing with Cousins for that starting right guard spot, but that now seems to be not the case anymore. It seems pretty clearly that Cousins is going to be the starter.
Pretty clearly not the case, yeah.
But I mean, like Venga has switched back to the right side, and Cousins looks to be the starter.
A lot of those guys around too. Like we've seen,
yes,
Drew Aller working with a lot of different options at center this year. Because again, like you're building this roster out, and like don't overthink or overhype what you see in spring, because we have seen some one-on-one reps, but like again, it's one rep in one practice in April. Really does not mean much. But again, it's building out the roster long term.
And as I said when we talked last time, like it's a good way to see how guys are moving, to see size, how who stands out from that standpoint. One guy winning a one-on-one rep doesn't mean anything. You're correct, but I think you can get a good indication of types of players, right? Like how a guy plays, as opposed to like how good they are necessarily. And I think that's been the case this spring too. I know I talked a bunch about Devontae Ross last time we spoke. I still think he's going to be Penn State's wide receiver 1 based on everything we've seen this spring. And they're going to look at receivers in the portal. They're going to look at every receiver that goes in the portal. I think essentially
deeply all of them. Yeah.
But I think they're trying essentially to add a number 1 at this point, right? Because there's less of a need for a number 2. You have, I think, at worst, Ross is a quality number 2. I do think he's capable of being a number 1, as I've said before. Hudson, I think, is a quality number 2. Kyron Hudson, that is a quality number 2. Caden Saunders, potential slot. Tysu Denmark, potential slot. Like they have a bunch of guys who can have roles and be 2s and 3s in this offense, but they need someone at the top of the depth chart, essentially, unless Ross steps up into that role. And so I don't think they're going to add receivers just to add numbers. It seems to me that is strictly a top of the depth chart issue right now. And I don't think that's going to be a position, for all the consternation about it, that is going to get someone just to get someone. It's got to be someone that's going to have a real impact on the team.
Yeah, and that's yes, as we sit here recording, there are players from around the country who are going to enter the portal. There are players who are going to go in with the do not contact designation, which typically is a very good indicator if that player knows where they want to go.
That has changed a little bit, though, because that can just mean a player's deferring to their agent and doesn't want to be contacted.
Don't blow up my phone. Here's my personal email. Yeah. Because, I mean, that's again, depends on, obviously, the caliber of player, who the agent is, who they're working with. But, yeah, because you're getting guys who are just going in and getting their phones absolutely blowing up. Just like they were elite high school recruits all over again. So probably don't want to have to deal with that if you don't have to.
Yes.
But yeah, I think we'll leave the portal there for now, but just know that that's going on in the background. That's a thing that's very much real, very very messy, but certainly something we'll continue to monitor.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I had Ioane flipped. He was on the left side last year. I was actually checking this on my, in case anyone saw me looking down. Ioane went back to the left side. I think I had it flipped earlier when I said it. He was on the right during spring ball. Whatever, none of it matters yet. They'll figure everything out in the fall camp portion of all of this. But yeah, no, we've also talked to a bunch of people though, and I think one of the ones that stood out to both of us is Jim Knowles, who I think is fantastic to speak to. It's weird. I guess my expectation coming into this was that it was like interviews with Jim Knowles were difficult and not helpful, I guess. But I found the exact opposite to be true. He is a very thoughtful guy. Like he answers questions, right? Like at
Pretty
no point,
honestly, it seems, yeah.
yeah, and at no point do you feel like you're being fed something that isn't true or anything like that. He's thinking about what you say and he's responding to what you say, which also means you better ask something that is good because he is going to answer what you ask. He's not
Very
inferring
soft-spoken.
stuff. Yes, incredibly soft-spoken. It was very funny. We were in a scrum after practice and on Tuesday, and Knowles was in front of the backdrop that they have for James Franklin usually, and everyone moved in closer because everyone kind of knows that he's a quieter guy and he doesn't have a microphone or anything in front of him. And he just kind of gravitates toward the person asking the question as if you're having a conversation with him, which is nice. And so he kind of just shifted to half of the scrum because questions were coming from over there. So he just started to move toward that side of it. It was very funny. But he was great. I thought he gave a lot of insight. I asked him about the 4-2-5, right? I asked him about that fifth defensive back, about who stood out. The first name he brought up, Audrey, do you remember who that was?
Well, he mentioned Colin Dinkins earlier.
First. He mentioned Colin Dinkins first, which is interesting. Khalil Dinkins' brother, of course, Colin Dinkins, who was a walk-on, although I'm hesitant to say anything about the sort of scholarship aspect of everything because of the way things are handled nowadays with potential NIL, covering scholarship, all that stuff. Like I don't know what the situation specifically is with Colin Dinkins, but he got to Penn State as a walk-on. And he's received rave reviews before. He's been a special teams contributor. He's been a very valuable player for Penn State, and the fact that he's stepping up into, being a potential contributor on defense, I don't think is overly surprising. He is someone I think that fits that role really well. To be clear, I still like Zion Tracy hasn't been practicing when we've been in there, and neither is King Mack. Like I think both of those guys could position themselves to be that third safety, that fifth defensive back. But Dinkins standing out, I think is relevant. I think it's a good sign that he's going to be getting reps there at some point this fall. Because I asked Knowles about like kind of the demands of that position, what separates it, and he said about you kind of have to do everything. And I also asked him like, is this more of a mental position than a physical one? He said obviously there's a lot of physical stuff, but yes, essentially the mental aspect of playing that spot is different because you're being asked to do so much. And he said that's part of why guys have liked it in the past because they learned that they're capable of more and that they can do more and they want to do more. And so I think that was really interesting and I think something to monitor moving forward with that spot and who ends up winning it.
Am I remembering correctly, John? It's very possible I'm not. Got a lot going on around here. But
really,
was it Colin Dinkins who almost had that crazy interception the first or second week we were at practice?
Oh man, I believe so. I think so. Yes.
Like it almost was.
Though honestly, the thing that stands out to me from one-on-ones when I think of one catch is still Lyric Samuel's like one-handed acrobatic grab. I think the second week we were in there, maybe the third.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Dinkins is impressive athletically. I don't think he's he's not like a walk-on that is there because he was high effort, high motor. Not saying he's not, but he also has the athletic chops to play at this level. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is a decent role pretty quickly.
It's been the spring of Dink and the spring of Elliott Washington, right? That's been the other one that's been.
He's fantastic.
Competitor of the Day awards have just been actually like they've. And I thought James Franklin's point on that a couple of weeks ago was really good. About he was asked about Elliott Washington and like, okay, he's won 6 winner competitor of the Day awards.
Not just 6, all 6.
All 6, yes. And James's point was like, listen, like we don't just give these out. Like these aren't participation trophies. Like we tell the position coaches, like, who do you think's the guy who has earned it? And so obviously, like I think you talk about players whose stock is on the rise. Elliot Washington for sure is one of those guys too to kind of keep in mind. Um, Jim Knowles highlighted some other guys as well. John, do you remember anyone else stick out to you? I know Anthony Specca, he spoke highly of the linebacker. He
Yes.
also said like Dom DeLuca is like, that's the leader back there. That's the guy.
I believe you mentioned Kenny Wosley too, getting some
He
reps at
did. You're right. He did.
fifth DB spot, which I think is interesting. He was asked about Zion Tracy specifically. I think, or at least he spoke about Zion Tracy specifically, and said that he kind of wants to see him do it. Like he knows he can play the slot because he saw him do it last year, but like you still want to see him do it in practice. And I think that's going to be a really interesting part of this. I think a lot of those guys are going in with a really clean slate, like outside of Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Zakee Wheatley, Tony Rojas, like those guys are fixtures, right? AJ Harris, Elliot Washington's become that. But I think outside of that, everyone kind of has a bit of a clean slate in a very real sense. I know James always says like every spot is being competed for in camp.
Yeah.
Like, they're not. Like I mean, maybe they are, but they're handed out immediately because it's very clear that Drew Aller's the best quarterback on the team, right? Like I get what he's saying, but it's not entirely.
But next year,
it's not playing out like it's a true open competition.
That starting quarterback job is going to be up for grabs next year, right?
We'll see who's here to fight for it. And I think it's. I do think it's interesting though that Knowles has kind of given pretty much all of the non-stars, I guess, a true clean slate, and guys have a chance to go in and earn reps based on what he sees in practice. Because during practice, he is watching and he is looming and lurking, and he's like not like. It's very funny. When we're in there, he is not like hands-on at all. He's watching. He's clearly very attentive. He's intentional with everything. He's clearly focused, right? And best I can describe him as quiet, and James Franklin has described him as quiet, and we described him to quiet as Zane Durant, and he said, "What are you talking about?" Which is I think a good indication. Yeah, like that. He said, so I forget the exact quote is in my story that you can find over at SundayDaily.com about like essentially that, he doesn't see a quiet side. Like he's always yelling, right? Like about something, or he's always intense. And honestly, that's what I'd heard about Knowles before he got to Penn State too, from people who know him, that he's a really intense guy, that he takes practice seriously. So I wonder if this quiet part is one, because we're in there, or two, because he's just evaluating right now and not getting his, like they're working on install rather than perfecting things. And so I'd be curious to see if that changes during the fall. But yeah, Knowles is fascinating to me. I am very curious to see what this defense looks like. I believe I said when he was hired that I think it'll be the best defense in the country, and it's only going to be better with him. And I have no reason not to believe that now.
He was asked pretty point blank this week. Obviously he's been around a championship caliber team. Do you think this team has kind of that it factor to be a championship caliber? And he goes, yes. Next question. Like what he
actually said was yes, and then he like looked away for another question. Then he looked back and goes, yes, next question.
Yeah,
which I think is another good sign of Jim Knowles is answering what you ask him. And if the answer is yes or no, he's going to say yes or no.
And the thing that I asked him was, in terms of what's it been like working with Andy Kotelnicki and kind of the back and forth there of those guys helping each other. And he dropped what I think is a little nugget there. He said, yeah, it's been great. We've been like really again, I'm paraphrasing, been really communicative. And I think something along the lines of, I believe we're communicating more, Andy and I, than at any place I've ever been. So
that feels notable.
Take that for what it's worth. It seems kind of notable. Seems like perhaps the personalities of maybe the two best coordinators in college football, maybe the two, the staff of the best coordinators in the country. That seems like things are going well there. But I do think there is that benefit. Knowles said, he's like seeing an offense that does all the things that Andy's offense does, and seeing it at this point, in the spring, he's like, this is really beneficial for our guys. And so I think that's the other piece of this. I know, like, undoubtedly coming out of the blue-white game, you always get the side of, wow, the offense looks great. What does it mean for the defense, right? Which, again, like, there won't be that need to overreact or overly dissect that this year because people won't be able to watch it at home.
I was going to say there won't be the ability to do that unless you're in attendance or you're reading what I write over at SundayDaily.com.
Or listening to the podcast, because we will both be there in the press box or whatever.
We will be
However
there
that
in an
works.
enclosed space covering the blue-white game. I don't
We
know
might.
exactly where it'll be,
One
but we'll be
year
there.
one year I sat in the stands because it was like a really nice day, and I was like, I'm just gonna take the laptop out to the stands and do some work. So
That's
yeah,
less
I don't.
accessible now.
That's true. It's like half the
There's no
stadium.
secret door underneath for us to just go out and
Yeah,
go
it's gonna
meandering
be
around anymore.
which I'm curious to be back in the building and just kind of see. I mean, obviously, like it's still a construction site. I mean, there's a lot going on, but just if there are any changes that we notice from the Beaver Stadium upgrades and kind of, I mean, because every time I drive past it, you start to see some of the other things, right? Like Jeffrey Field, all the construction there is going on, and it's really noticeable. So yeah, so I just again, we'll get to that next week. But yeah, I think Jim Knowles is a fascinating guy, and that I would kind of give him, and again, maybe my read on this is completely wrong. It's possible, but he kind of gives off the curmudgeon vibes, which I
I don't
really like.
I
But
don't
he's like
think he's
he's
a I've heard
personable.
this.
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard this about him being a curmudgeon, and I think he
I think it
is
depends on your definition of curmudgeon, I think is
I
where
think he's misunderstood a little in that regard. I think he's quiet and not talkative and thoughtful, and he kind
Mhm.
of uh gives what he gets sort of type thing, right? Like if you're being thoughtful or whatever, he's going to be thoughtful. If you're being
Yeah.
curt, he's going to be curt, right? Like
Yeah.
uh I don't think he's like grumpy, right? Like I don't see him
No,
as someone
no.
who's
And
like in a
it's
bad
the
mood.
players seem to really like him. I mean, and that was
Yes.
obviously
I
through
think
like
he's
where he's worked before. Yeah.
I think he's very likable. I think he has an expectation for people, and has a standard for people and interactions. And yeah, I'd heard that a lot about him being kind of a curmudgeon and not being like inviting when you're talking to him or whatever. And I didn't find that to be the case at all. I just think he was, if he's not interested in something, he's just not interested in it, right? But when he is interested in something, he like is
Yeah.
interested in it.
Yeah, he's
I don't
kind
know.
of out
I
there,
know it sounds basic,
baggy
but
baggy sweats, just
yeah,
surveying the practice field, and you're
Jim
like, this
Knowles and
is
I
great.
dress the same way. Like he's I just don't have
Yeah,
Penn State
that's
logos on
yeah.
my
I mean,
stuff. It's
he again like
sweatpants and hoodies, baby.
we all work from home around here, and look at us, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Listen, even when I'm not working from home, I'm putting the sweatpants or joggers on, I'm putting a hoodie on, I'm going
what is
about my
work, John?
business.
What is that?
It is, yeah, well, it's the thing that
Anyhow,
I'm doing. Anyway, no, I think that Knowles is going to be a fascinating piece of everything moving
mhm.
forward for Penn State as long as he's there. And who knows how long that'll be. My expectation would be at least 2 years, but you never know with these things. Uh, because as
Actually,
much as
well, boy, I'm jinxing
go
this.
ahead,
This is I
go
just
ahead.
and just popped into my head. How wild would that be if you're Jim Knowles and you win back-to-back national championships with two different teams?
Yeah, that's your fault. And I will let the Penn State fans blame you for essentially ruining their chances at a national
I
title
just again, no, I
on April
come on,
17th.
John, come on. That means if you're thinking I'm ruining it, it means you don't believe.
I don't know if I believe. I think they're the best team in the country. I've said that before, though. I think
Hmm. Have you?
uh,
Have you?
we'll see how it plays out. I
We got a
listen.
ways to go until
Things
then.
get weird. Yeah, like they play Oregon, they play Ohio State, they play an Indiana team that I think will probably be a little bit worse, but uh, they can trip up. They can trip up in the playoff. Sometimes it isn't about being the best team, right? I don't think that maybe this will make people angry. I don't think Penn State and Notre Dame were like the second and third best teams in the country last year. I think you make the argument. I'm not saying that it's not possible.
Oregon gets a tough draw, and you see what happens.
Yeah, I think the second best team in the country is probably Oregon. But tough draw. It is what it is. Sometimes you make it further based on your draw. That's not to take anything away from Penn State. They had to win the games they did,
Mhm.
and they did, and they nearly made it to the national title game. Like that was pretty clearly a top 5 to 8 team in the country that should be celebrated as such. But yeah, sometimes it's just about what's in front of you too. Like that's sports. It's about the path as much as it's about your
Mhm.
quality, anyways. And eventually, you got to beat a good team, and they'll beat good teams this coming year. I feel confident saying that. Like I think this is the year. I'll say this about it.
Oh boy.
I think this is a year that a lot of the big game James, the negative connotations with how James Franklin's spoken about, like kind of gets put to rest. I think they're going to beat at least one of Oregon or Ohio State, if not both. Like I think there's a chance they're undefeated this year. They have, for my money, a top
Speaking of
three
jinxes,
quarterback in the country.
wow.
Whatever. Like you're saying, you're going
I
too
opened
far.
the door and you just marched right through it. Yeah.
And this is how I do things. But yeah, like I think
Mhm.
this is a high quality team that is having a good spring because everyone that was banged up is getting rest and getting healthy, and it seems like at least there hasn't been anything major that's happened on the injury front. They haven't lost massive contributors in the portal yet. They're trying to add there too. Like that's really what you want out of spring ball. I think next Saturday is going to be really interesting, based on the format, like what that'll look like. I think it'll be really
We'll find that
interesting to
out
see.
this week, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there will be 45 questions about that next Wednesday. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what it all ends up looking like. It's going to be quick, and I'm very excited for that. No commercial breaks, no halftime. Like they're just going to roll through a practice. That sounds amazing to me. But yeah, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. Nothing we've seen this spring kind of should dampen that. It's spring ball. Why would it anyways? But Devontae Ross has looked good. Their running backs have been their running backs, and you know what you're getting there.
I
Like this
wanted I
is
wanted to hop in on that with the running backs with Nick
okay.
Singleton.
Yes.
Because we spoke with Singleton 2 weeks ago, and I asked him, because again, it's the first we've spoken to him since the Orange Bowl. Like, are there any moments from that game that stand out to you? And he's like, no, honestly, like I just tried to flush it. Because I think, which is like a very healthy response. When
Yeah.
you start thinking back and I'm sure Penn State fans have done this a million times, you start thinking back to that game last year and the moments where it looks like Penn State's right there, has the opportunity to kind of put the foot down and finish it, and they can't. And I think those are kind of the things that you say, okay, well, they're getting all these guys back, right? Are they running it back this year or whatever? Like whatever they're doing, um, how does Nick Singleton kind of fit into all of that? And Singleton was saying that, he was asked some numbers and such, and he's like, yeah, I'm well aware of the rushing record and what it takes to get there. Now, you and I feel like might have had this conversation on here before. If not, I know we've definitely had the conversation off air about records in this era with the expanded playoff and more games. And like last year,
Yeah,
it's like, okay, it's different.
it, it's definitely different, but it's like I always go back to the discussion I was had about Saquon Barkley potentially breaking the rushing record
Mhm.
last year, which I believe he would have done on fewer carries than Eric Dickerson, which I think also matters. But that also means he's fresher. Whatever, you can have that whole discussion. The NFL season was not always 14 games, was not always 16 games, was not always 17 games,
17.
right? Like seasons expand in football seemingly all the time. And so inevitably, all of these records are going to get broken because the seasons have gotten longer. Just because a record happened during the 16 game season doesn't mean it doesn't count. Like, are you only counting, seasons that had 8 games in the 40? You know what I mean? Like that stuff happens. Guys play longer. It is what it is. I don't think there's any need to like we're in a weird spot in the sports
Mhm.
discourse where it feels like everything has to be an argument. It doesn't. Like
Yeah,
it's
and
okay to
I'm
just
not a
enjoy. It's
yeah,
okay to just
enjoy the
enjoy
game.
people
I'm not a
breaking the
knee-jerk
record.
person. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying like it's okay to just enjoy,
Mhm.
like if Saquon had broken the rushing record, if Nick Singleton breaks the Penn State rushing record, it's okay to just enjoy that without being like, well, actually, like you don't have to do that.
Which one
Like,
was better, John?
yeah, it's fine. They were both great. They were both great seasons. Like, yeah, I think not everything has to be a. I can't say that phrase on here.
Cake.
Not everything has to be a contest with things
Yeah, I
like
mean,
this.
say it, John. Go
Uh,
ahead. Say it.
yeah, like you know what I mean. Like it just doesn't have to be like that with all of these things. Just enjoy the great things players do. Nick Singleton is one of the best running backs to ever play at Penn State. Is in line to have a potentially all-time season, as is Jon Allen. Like they're going to be the best backfield in the country, with potentially the best quarterback in the country, depending on the kind of steps he can take forward this year. And the NFL drafts next week, and a year from now, you're going to be hearing Drew Aller's name in all likelihood in round one. You'll be hearing Dennis Sutton's name potentially in round one, Zane Durant's name potentially in round one. You're going to be hearing these running backs go in the first 3 to 4 rounds. Like there are a lot of really talented players on this team that I think people should just enjoy and enjoy them while they have them, because they also stayed for 4 years. Like that is the
I wanted
thing
to
that I
get to
think
that
gets
too. Yeah.
lost in this.
hmm Yes, because obviously you have the discourse with Tennessee and what happened there with the portal. My sounds like my Vols are trying to figure out their financial situation, right? My beloved Vols, as we like to joke about them.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I did nearly just panic because Penn
Uh,
State football tweeted, "What a ride! Thanks for the memories, coach." And I was like, "What just happened during the podcast?" And it's a Lee Corso, thank you. So
oh, okay. Well,
like, I got stressed out a lot just now.
yeah, that would be like
Anyways,
odd timing to do that.
yes, for anything from anyone. So
Um, but no, I think obviously the Tennessee discourse and this era that we are in the sport, I do think it says something about Penn State and how this roster is constructed, the players they have, the culture that they have, that we have not seen these messy portal disputes here. Um, if they have happened, they've been behind closed doors and haven't
so
gotten out
that's
the
the
public,
thing. Like
which
every
is also a win
program,
for them.
yes, every program deals with these things.
Mhm,
Uh, they keep things in house really, really well, right? Like they
mhm.
keep things internal, and it's part of why they have success in retaining players because they keep it all internal and it doesn't turn into, I don't know, your star quarterback having people around him give him terrible guidance and then leaving, say, Tennessee and not having a great landing spot,
Mhm.
right? Like it's Penn State has handled it well. Drew Aller's handled everything well. Nick Singleton, like all of the players too, deserve a lot of credit for handling these situations professionally. They have agents, they have people around them. Their families have handled it well. Like they could easily be in a situation like Tennessee is right now, and they're not. And the players could be in situations like you see plenty of players around the country in, and they're not because Penn State handles those things so well behind closed doors, which is a credit to Franklin and the culture and the way they kind of do business. It's a pretty professional environment.
And the other piece of that too is like you take somebody like King Mack, and James Franklin was asked this week about Mack. It's like, well, was here, left for Alabama, now he's back. And Franklin said, throughout that process, that it was the players on the team that Mack still had relationships with, that he was kind of reaching out to and saying, hey, like, can I come back? Should I come back? I want to come
He said
back.
he was talking to them throughout the year.
Yeah. So like again, those relationships, the human aspect of this really matters. Because again, I think that's also the really special, unique thing about college football is that oftentimes these guys are living together and they're friends and they're playing video games together and doing everything else that 18 to 22-year-olds do together on a college campus, right? And those relationships, those friendships, they matter. Like that's the unique part of this. You always hear from players and coaches when they go to the NFL, and it's like, well, what's different? It's like, well, at the end of the day, NFL is a job, and you kind of punch out and you go home to your family and whatever. Where obviously college, it does not work that way. So yeah, that's another layer here. I'm curious as the off season progresses and as we get closer to next season, like what is King Mac's kind of role? What does that look like? At some point, I'm sure we'll hear from Mac in the preseason or something like that because I'd be just curious to kind of hear a little bit more of his side of going through the portal process now twice to leave and then come back, and just kind of what that was like for him.
Yeah, and it says a lot that players are saying, presumably to him, like, yeah, you should come back, right? Like things are good here. Uh, Now, I don't want to completely dismiss the Keandre Lambert Smith situation last year, but even that didn't get all that public. You know what I mean? Like what everything happened there generally was behind closed doors, um, despite any shots fired by Lambert Smith with some of the comments he was making in the offseason last year, which is fine. He's well within his rights to do that. But yeah, no, I think the way Penn State does it has them in a really secure spot moving forward, and even with there's going to be a lot of turnover next year, right? Like they're going to lose a lot. I think they're going to be in position to be successful in 2026 as well, just because the train kind of keeps rolling and they keep adding and they keep retaining and they keep developing in a way that most programs don't.
Yeah, and that's, I think kind of the perfect assessment or the perfect example of that is the offensive line and what Phil Troutwine's been able to do. And over time, have they've taken, this position group that was more heavily criticized than the wide receiving core has been the last two years. And they've kind of taken that group and really made it a strength. And they're churning out, big time NFL prospects too, which is so critical to keeping that pipeline going with your recruitments and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, the program is in a very healthy spot. And I think when you go through spring, it's James Franklin always says, right? You want low drama and low maintenance, right? You want the just kind of. It's a good thing when you get through a spring and there aren't any big headlines or there aren't any significant injuries or there aren't any, very public portal disputes. So far so good for Penn State on the spring ball front.
Yeah, no, they've been as good of a position as they can be. But I think that covers everything that we wanted to get to today. We'll be back to talk more post spring ball, post spring game as well. Either the day of the game or maybe the following week. But we'll be back and we'll be around moving forward into this season. Here at the Nittany Dispatch, we've got you covered. If you would like to read everything I have written, you can find that over at centerdaily.com. You can find me on Twitter at Jon Sauber. And on Blue Sky, if you search Jon Sauber, you can find Audrey on Twitter at AudSnyder4. And on Blue Sky, if you search Audrey Snyder. Until next time, what did you say?
But I'm there. That's where you can find me.
Yes, you are.
That's where I'm at these days.
That's right. All righty. Until next time, thank you for tuning in and have a great day.